Hello everyone, we are live. Had a little hiccup there with the stream, but continuing on from yesterday's morph-o-matic madness in Blender, trying to solve the problem with the morphs not working as expected in IMVU. So this is not necessarily well, it's just a continuation of working on the file and trying to get it to work. So as I was going to work on this project in Blender, do some more stuff, as one does, I thought I might as well stream it. 16. Yeah, so streaming, problem solving. This is what most of this stuff is about, problem solving. Something not working the way it's expected to work, so we have to solve the problem. Why is it not working the way that it should? So in this particular instance, we should have, is that the right one? 16. Right. So in this particular instance, we should have a set of animations playing. So load up one of the earlier ones. 12, I think. So what we've got is, or what we should have, is something that is a improvement. I guess that's the word to use. An improvement on this basic furniture item. So we've got an let me just put a reference object in so we can see the. So what we've got is a mesh that's attached to a very basic skeleton that animates. So there are two types of animation for this. There's a skeletal animation, which is the bike bobbing up and down, and then there are the morph animations, which is the changing shape of the exhaust and the hearts. But they don't work the way they should work, because what should happen, which version is it? I think it's this one. Right, so what we're looking at in IMVU here is this in Blender. So we've got the nodes which make up a furniture item, and those are animated. Well, it's just actually one node that's animated, which is the node that controls the mesh, and that moves up and down. And then there is a morph or shapekey animation that's associated with the mesh, and a few other bits and pieces that work perfectly well in Blender. So the idea is that as the hearts are ejected from the exhaust pipe, we can see a tiny little one there. The morph, or the shapekey, changes the size of the heart, and then the heart is animated using a node that follows a path. Well, it's positioned to create a path. So what we're looking at, this dotted line, is a visual aid that Blender has that's quite useful actually. So if you select the object that's being animated, and in object properties, we have this ability to generate a path which acts as a visual aid. So that's this section here. Need to change color. That's this section. It will generate a path and we can use that as a visual guide to plot the position of our objects. Which is very handy. So, yes, what should be happening in IMVU is the hearts should be appearing and behaving essentially like that, but they don't. For some reason, this is what we were trying to discover, well, what we were trying to figure out yesterday, in yesterday's stream, or the previous stream, is that something in the FBX export import process, something is being corrupted or incorrectly interpreted, so that the morphs, so each heart has its own set of morph keys, which are in object data properties. So they have their own set and their own animation track. So there are 3 of each. Well, there are 3 sets of. So each heart has a set of keys and animation. Whoops. And what that should do on export is create 1, 2, 3, 4 mesh objects, and each mesh object should have its own morph sequence and set of shape key or morph information. But for some reason that doesn't happen. On export or import, wherever the problem is occurring, IMVU mixes them all together and creates a massive jumble of animations and morphs, because it's not separating out the morph. It's not separating the morphs properly relative to the objects that we should have. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 meshes, and we should really just have 4 morph animations, but we have, I don't know how many there are there. There's a lot. So we have a lot of morph animations and a lot of skeletal animations. So it's over duplicating the data. This also has a direct consequence, or direct, this also causes the morph to be, you can't control the morph as well as you should do, because once an animation sequence has been applied to a mesh, because of the way that this is working, it basically applies the morph that's assigned to all the objects. So even though there are no, these are the heart meshes, the smoke. So each of these should have their own morph sequence that controls them, but they don't. IMVU, for some reason, is picking up the morph data from the morph information that's assigned to the Harterbike mesh, which is this section, and then just automatically assigning it. So when you try and do something with the morphs, it'll, well, let's do it. It'll break the morph. So it'll invert it or multiply the effect. So if something is shrunk down to 0, it'll invert that and make it a negative value, which sounds odd, but what that does is if an upright object is shrunk to 0, the inverse of that is to invert the object, which is what happens. It inverts the object, so it's doing some weird calculation thing. I don't know what's going on there. But that means that it's breaking the morph animation sequences. So it's partially working, but doesn't work the way that it should. So in trying to figure out what's going on, a different alternative is, so this is what is trying to work on after the stream last night, after doing a bit of thinking. So we know that this setup works, which is the nodes. We know that the nodes work. So this furniture item, when exported, works. And it'll give us, once the pose has been imported and assigned to the mesh, it will give us this posed furniture item. Whereas this one, it's not doing that. So so all the morphs are broken. And this was with a skeletal version, which is so that's a skeletal version. So the hearts are being controlled by bones. But that doesn't work as expected, because for some reason, regardless of the fact that everything is set up the way that it should be, putting everything together, assembling the pose with the furniture item, results in this. It doesn't. The avatar is in the right position, but the pose information is not. What's the word? Synchronizing. It's not syncing up. So, as we know that works and that doesn't, we can problem solve by changing the way that we do the animation. So instead of using bones to animate the objects, what we can try and do is keep the basic furniture item, which is nodes, because we know that works, but animate the hearts using a morph to control their behavior. So this entails essentially creating two sets of keys, or shape keys, for the hearts. One is shrunk down, so that's heart 1. So that's one of the set, that's set 1, and the other one is its position. So the shape key has the 0 position set in front of the exhaust, and the 1, or the what's the word? The extreme of the key is just positioning the heart at the extreme of an approximate path. So this path that we're looking at, that we can see, is redundant essentially. So this is redundant, and we can actually delete that. So that is object . Oh, there was a way to do it. Oh no, it's because the objects are still in the scene. There we go. So what we're doing, so what we're doing is using morphs to create the animation that we need. So let me just reload that. Just double check. Right, so to work we go. So the meshes have all been joined together, so we're now using just one mesh, and as I say, there we are controlling the animation using morph keys or shape keys. So as the smoke exits the exhaust, its size is upshrunk, and then it just travels along a path to the end point of the morph key or the shape key. It's not as controllable, but it works. It'll give us an approximate, so we can then at some point export and test and see how including the morph with the bike changes the behavior, because we've not altered the skeletal setup for the furniture item. All we're doing is just making the morph, which produced the original morph for the bike, is just the exhaust closing and opening. So all we're effectively doing is just adding another set of tracks to that. Now, of course, the controls for this are a bit, they're not as precise as if we were using bones in the skeleton. So because with this one we can't control its position where it emerges from the pipes, whereas if we had a bone we could adjust that, so we have to sort of lump it. But that does mean that we have to extend the animation in order to accommodate the fact that these hearts, there are 3 of them and they need to loop back, so each heart will have to loop back. It should appear as if it's going to pop, it pops, loops back and then reappears as each of the hearts move forward. But in order to accommodate all 3 of them doing that, the length of the pipe sequence has to be increased. So that's but this is a known, it's timed so that it's, oh, that's why. So I need to make an adjustment there, because, so select all of that. It should be the same distance between each of the this will probably mean changing the that works. Oh, that's alright. That's okay. And ideally the loop should have the same start and end. So we kind of have to accommodate the rise and fall of the bike at the same time. May have to, but this is the morph animation is separate to the skeletal animation, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue. But so the start of the sequence is an open, pulled back set of pipes, so the end should be pulled back and open. So we need to make sure that even though the position of the bike has changed, so it's up here now, at the beginning it's further down. It's further down, but because the morph animation is not associated with what is going to be or what is the skeletal animation, we can make one longer than the other one because they loop independently of one another, or they should loop independently of one another. So that's heart 1. So it's just a question now of, so that's heart 3. No, that's 2. Oh, there we go, heart 3. So shrink that down. Oh, there it is. Right, so it's popped, and the next frame is it's shrunk down and moved. It should be moved back in front of the pipes. So get rid of that one. And this can get a little tricky. So this is where you have to have your thinking caps on. So that's it's not necessarily the end of the sequence. So right, let's go back to the beginning. Right, so that's one. So keep an eye on this first set. So that's disappeared and reappeared. Set 2's gone, reappeared. So we now need to do set 3 and then fiddle with the sequence so that for set 1, this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. So we want to cycle, so that's cycled 3. So 3 was here, so we cycled that back. We need to cycle 2 back, and then when 1 gets to here, that's the end of the loop. So that's quite a bit of thinking. So we can move, so that's 2 and 3. It's 1 and 3. So get rid of that keyframe that's there, that shouldn't be there. So that's the extent of the So needless to say, depending on how you set up your project, because each of the hearts was originally associated with a separate node and then bone as we tried different options. So there are different vertex groups, but the problem with that is that the vertex groups are kind of useless for this element or section of the project. So what would have possibly been better, although it means using more textures, although I know what we could do, because the hearts all use the same texture for, you know, purposes of efficiency. So what we can, that's making it difficult to track which set of hearts we're watching. So what we can do, because we can't, the vertex groups are good for selecting the hearts when we are setting up the, what do they call it? Shape keys. It's good for selecting the shape keys, setting up the shape keys, because the hearts are all in the same place. So if you watch the previous, in the previous video, we use the vertex groups to select the appropriate heart to set up the shape keys, which is fine in edit mode, but we're not in edit mode, we're in object mode. So that means it's difficult to determine which heart we're looking at when they all use the same material. So they use the same material and the same texture. So we can address that quite simply by vertex painting. Why is it doing that? we can just temporarily color the objects. So that's set 1. You don't have to color the whole thing. We can leave that as red, or one of these is red, and then just do the other one. So let's try yellow. Nope, that's not worked. So we need a color that's not going to show up as black on red. Color theorists. That's funny. What about pink? Nope. Need a color. Red on red doesn't work, obviously. That's funny. So that one was blue and that one's green, but on red they both essentially look black. So nice idea whilst it was that's kind of funny actually. Oh, there we go. Let's just do it in solid mode. That'll work. In fact, funnily enough, we can paint the hearts in red. So in solid mode, this should... Oops. Oh no, it doesn't. Dagnabbit. Well, at least we know that... let's get rid of... Just remove that colouring, so we at least know that which one is. I'll have to go back over these and fix the. So we know at least that that's set 1, so that's going to be set 2 and set 3. But that makes it easier to trace at least one set. So, back to animating. So that's 1, 2, 3. So that's disappeared, reappeared. So we need to get set 1 back to that position. Or thereabouts. Whoops. Oh, that's interesting. That's why it's offsetting. Huh. I have to look at that. So set 1, move that along, set 2, move that along. So we want set 3 which is that one, that needs to be at the extreme for now, and then it returns ready for the shrink and then being pushed out. Whoops. Yeah, that's weird. That means that for some reason the shape key for smoke 3 is somehow assigned or associated with the other hearts. I'm not quite sure what's happened there. Not quite sure how to fix that either. Right, so we've got so that's number 3. Okay, so that is... So what we've essentially got here is 2 sequences in one, because we've essentially got what looks like a start block, and then we've got an end, or well, not an end block, but we've got a block that loops. So when we are tracking through, there's obviously nothing occurring in the sequence from frame 0 or frame 1, and then from 1 to frame 35, or even maybe 45. Well, it'll be 44. So from frames 44 onwards, that's where our repeat cycle comes into play. So that's balloon set 1, that's balloon set 2, that's balloon set 3. And then we've got the same sort of thing at frames 44. So what we can do is, once we've got the basic cycle set up, because remember that the morph or the shape keys, the shape key animation can loop independently of, where has it gone? It can loop independently of the node animation. So we can have two separate sequences running at the same time. One can be relatively long and the other one can be much shorter. But that means that what we can do there then is, so we can check, so set 3, what we can do is adjust the position using our markers that we've just drawn all over the screen to give us an approximate position of the hearts, so we can get a more fluid loop. So again, we're tracking heart number 1, so that loops back on itself, and then back to the end. So let's save this. What's the frame set at? Let's try that. So frame 44 all the way up to frame 90. So this will play, but it'll be very slow because we're streaming at the same time. And the heart of bike, the bike jumps because the sequence is only, that sequence is only partially playing through, whereas the loop is playing through without any issue. So that should work. So let's just save this. Save as 31. Yes, there are 30 different versions of the file. I'm trying to sort this out. Let's just have a quick look at the shape keys. So it's that one, for some reason, is so how do you remove the influence of a shape key? Because unlike vertex, oh, is there a, that's weird. So active element, shouldn't be anything selected. Select. So why isn't the cursor moving? That means for some peculiar reason there is a undue influence, a bad influence, a very bad one, bad influence on these objects because the cursor isn't shifting unless it's bounding box, individual origins. So let's try that again. Select. Yeah. That is weird. So smoke. Oh, okay. So select. Okay, this could be a little confusing. So the origin point is somehow changed for three. Or is it? Yeah, somehow. So how do you remove the influence of shape keys over something? Because shape key 3 is adjusting, it's unduly influencing all the objects, and it shouldn't do. So how do you it shouldn't be influencing the other sets of hearts. So does that mean you have to delete the shape key and re-establish it, or because there isn't a way to oh, maybe there is. There's got to be a way of removing the influence of a shape key over something without having to delete it and rebuild it. That seems, for want of a better word, retarded. That's really weird. Oh, so that's just the vertex group. Ho-hum. That seems very odd. Right, okay, well, we'll just have to stick with that. That's kind of annoying, actually, that you can't... There may be a way, no idea. You should be able to, essentially, in the same way that you can do with vertex groups, there should be a way to check the influence or check which elements of a mesh has a shape key associated with it, and if it does, that the influence can be removed. Doesn't seem to be the case. There may be. If someone knows, they can drop it in chat or send an email at iamflummoxed@catsbits.com. Right, so let's just clean up these vertex colors. Vertex painting gets everywhere. Right, so I want to keep that because we do need some shading, so drop that. Whoops. This just gives the objects a little bit of shape. Or shading. Cheap way of getting shading on your objects. This vertex paint. Right, so... Oh, and we have to fix this one as well, because we adjusted this, so... Whoops. Right, so add a little bit of tinting. All of these videos are archived for anyone that's interested in watching them and learning the various aspects of using Blender for, well, not just for IMVU, but just using Blender generally. Oh, hi, Frenzy. Yes. They are very much hearts of desire. Oh, and we've messed up that one as well. Right, that'll do. So, just check the animation again. And it's going to play really slow as before because of the streaming at the same time. Oh, there you go, Frenzy. Oh, right, so that's working. Save this just in case we want to go back to whatever it was that we had before, 32. And now we can try exporting this to see what happens. So select everything apart from the avatar. Make sure you have an object active, so it's selected and highlighted. And then just export to FBX and see what this does. So we want selected objects, disable apply modifiers because that'll destroy any morphs. Add leaf bones, disable, and animations. We want NLA strips disabled and force start and end keying. And then just export.